Strike while the iron's hot is what my dad always used to say. He was an iron worker with the local 340, which of course made his figurative language all the more rife with family history, sweat, and hard-fought dedication. I don't know what my dad would say if he were here today. The phone numbers I have for him are disconnected, and to be honest, I don't know where he is. On the run from a scorned wife looking for divorce and a company looking to press charges for his fraudulent use of a company credit card. But it'd probably be something like, strike while the iron's hot, bub, so I might as well strike while the iron's hot. I slip my hands between the elevator doors and look down the shaft, then up. The elevator is 3 floors above currently, which should be enough time for me to, jump down and land safely on the first floor, just narrowly scraping one of the springs that stopped the elevator car from slamming into the cement below. I again slide my hands between the elevator doors and run through the front door. It isn't until my bare feet are in agonizing pain from running across all of the little pieces of gravel on the sidewalk that I realize I am still completely naked and, judging by everyone's reactions, not in the best shape. Covering my genitals and ass crack, I shamefully run down the road, hoping to put as much distance between me and the EF Hutton building at the center of town, where I'd just left Melinda. By now, she's probably made it to her car parked across the street in that new parking lot next to the State Theater, which EF Hutton bought and closed down. They locked the doors, even though a local theater company, Springfield Stageworks, still had lighting and sound equipment stored inside. Larry Caressel, the founder of the theater troupe, says he thinks Hutton sold the equipment, or worse, just threw it away. Fucking despicable. I take a turn down Fountain, pass by the old Regent Theater, the Hollenbeck Bailey Creative Arts and Conference Center, and the Clark State Performing Arts Center Kuss Auditorium to circle back to the Clark County Public Library where I'd left my car. It's interesting to say left my car because I didn't leave my car. Melinda had kidnapped me from my car and dragged me back to that goddamn EF Hutton building at the center of goddamn town. It's also interesting that I didn't just take a shortcut through that parking lot behind the Marriott where President Obama stayed in 2012 to get to the library quicker. But to be frank with you, I just really like that little sculpture outside of the Kuss Auditorium. My keys are in my clothes, of course, which are not on me, but probably back at the EF Hutton building at the center of town. Luckily, my grandma bought me one of those little magnetic key holder things, so I reach down to a secret location, front driver's side tire, and retrieve the spare key. Inside, I find an oversized sweater, go Bucks, and a pair of my girlfriend Lasagna's underwear. Her name's Lasagna because of the color and texture of her hair. It's not a nickname, it's not something lovey-dovey I call her. Her name is Lasagna. The underwear are a little small, and my pecker isn't comfortable, but at least it's covered. There aren't any shoes, so I guess I'll have to drive barefoot, which really just means driving with my big toe and never really feeling like I have any sort of control over the vehicle whatsoever. I turn the ignition and start to press my big toe into the brake to shift into reverse when I recognize the voice coming from the radio. I turn up the volume and confirm. Shania Twain. Someone was in my car, listening to Shania Twain. Not like specifically Shania Twain, but country music. That is not one of the preset radio stations in my car. I only listen to soft rock, and I've been desperate to replace Light 92.9 and their syndicated reruns of Delilah, but I swear to God I would never listen to or have country music tuned up in my car. I scramble the music and switch it back to something decent. Love is a Battlefield by Pat Benatar, I guess. And look in my rearview mirror to safely back up my vehicle, recalling the wisdom of local driving instructor Linda McDaniel Shetter. The light at Spring Street takes for goddamn ever, so despite good judgment, I turn right and head towards South Limestone. Don't worry, I'm only jumping on the highway. I want to get the fuck as far away from this part of town as possible. But I also need to get back home to get clothes and... The explosion in my ears hurts like a goddamn motherfuck as I reel back from the impact of the airbag in front of me. T-boned in the passenger side and then slammed into the median wall by a large Ford truck, I knew in an instant it was Melinda. No. I spit out some teeth and run my tongue over my bleeding gum holes. Please, Don't do anything to... There is a migraine rippling through my head, and when I touch my forehead a bit to dab yeet at some blood, my field of vision goes completely white and searing hot white pain. Anything to hurt me! It's the sound of her cackling that I hope I will live long enough to be haunted by forever. It was kind of like a bird's mating call, but it sounded like a kid with the whooping cough, but really just a 50-year-old woman who smoked. It wasn't very human, to say the least, though. She was coming closer, I could see in my askew rearview mirror. I grapple and pull furiously on the handle to try and escape from the car, but the damage is too severe. The door will have to be removed with the jaws of life, probably. At least Melinda won't be able to get to me unless she... Yep. She opens up a back door, slides her little claw through the front, engages my seat recliner, and pulls me out onto the ground.
Why did you leave us so soon, Mr. McPeters? Was the EF Hutton building at the center of town not suitable for your needs?
She says with a cheerful smile on her face as she strokes both of my shoulders with her hands. Her hips pin me down on the ground, and the force in her stroke keeps me from doing anything crazy. I don't think I could knock her over if I tried, especially not with the lower back feeling so bad these days. I didn't sign up for all that other stuff. I just wanted a job application. You people are sick. I spit in her face. She lets the spit drip off of her face back onto mine as I writhe in pain underneath her. By now, she's no longer stroking my shoulders, but holding them down hard.
Mr. McPeters, we drug test all of our potential employees. We make all of our potential employees submit to physical and mental examinations. We ensure potential employees have the appropriate experience and references, and we verify their career and personal aptitude with a swift fist up the ass. We don't understand what the problem is, sir. We just want to see if you're loyal to the company. She smiles as she puts on a latex glove and dips her hand in a tub of Vaseline. I don't want a swift fist up the ass, ma'am. I wanted $15 an hour, but was willing to accept $10 an hour, really, if you swindled me into it, just to sit here and be miserable for 40 hours a week with mandatory overtime, I'm sure. Well, there's no mandatory overtime, Mr. McPeters, but if your manager assigns overtime, it would be required, and all managers are currently assigning 10 to 15 hours of overtime a week. So that should be great for any bills you may have, swift fist up the ass. She presents her lubricated fist like a sommelier presents a vintage bottle of expensive wine. I'm gonna have to pass on the swift fist up the ass, Melinda. I'm sorry, but no job is worth a swift fist up the ass, I manage to say moments before she crams her fist so far up my ass I can feel her push on the underside of my bladder, forcing a little bit of pee to dribble out onto Lasagna's underwear. To be honest, she'd lubed it up enough that it didn't hurt and felt pretty good. Ultimately, I didn't get the job, didn't pass the drug test, but I did have a few years of physical therapy from the car accident. I met this girl Jessica, though, at physical therapy, who gave me Hep C on our first date. We got married, but she passed away soon after she told me she was pregnant. I named the unborn fetus Marshawn and gave him a special engraving on Jessica's vault in our family's mausoleum. I'll be entombed next to her, probably with a plaque that says Father, and hopefully loved by many, or something like that. Maybe they'll spring for one of those etchings of my photos. I'd like to be stuffed or propped up like Lenin or Jeremy Bentham, but that's outlandish. Anyway, that's the story of the first time I got fisted. It started an obsession that goes on to this day. But not like today, because I tore it a little bit the other day, and it's still red from doing it too much, and I don't want to tear it anymore. But soon, for sure. Oh, okay now. All right now, Mr. McPeters. Shh. Now that's enough now. Now go on back to sleep. Oh, the nurse tucks the old man back in and rubs his head until he falls asleep. The end. That was The Iron Fist. Now, that was one of the first stories that I wrote in this new renaissance, if you will, that has now become Audio Tales. And the challenge that I gave myself when I wrote that was to try to write in first person, but also live as it's happening. One of the things that I think makes
a story exciting is when it's just happening right in front of you. You know, it's not the characters in the story telling you what happened. You're just experiencing it with them. I've been told by, well, my own girlfriend, I'm not going to lie about who told me, but Taylor told me that I write sort of, or my stories kind of sound like movies, or they're written in sort of a play, theatrical way, sort of film, where it's just literally what is happening. It's not necessarily overly descriptive or waxing poetic, as it were. It's just, this is what happened. And, you know, I really like that. And I also, as sort of has become kind of a style of mine, I really love dropping in all these places and these references to especially places in Springfield. But there are so many things that are just baked into that script. My real life experience with not knowing where my father was at the time. Now I know sort of where he is, I guess. But he's not a part of my life still. Now there's also the mention of wanting to be stuffed. And that is true. I kind of think, obviously, I'd rather be immortal. Let's be honest. Immortality is what I'm shooting for. But if immortality doesn't happen, fingers crossed that it will, well, here's the second best option, cryogenically frozen, okay? Let's be real. If I could afford to be cryogenically frozen, and if realistically they could revive the people who are cryogenically frozen, then I'd just wake back up after what would seem like a split-second nap, and I'd continue my life living forever, thus immortal, because about the time that they'd be able to revive a cryogenic brain, they'd also have immortality, right? So my top two choices are still immortality. But let's assume that we're living in the true reality. Guys, I want to be stuffed. I think it's so fucking cool that some of these people like Vladimir Lenin and Jeremy Bentham and some other people have had these famous dead bodies that have just been on display, stuffed, and just displayed publicly for as long as they could last. Ew, it's gross, let's be honest, but I think it's fascinating. How fucking fascinating would it be to go view Vladimir Lenin's body? Not his grave, his body. Just right there in front of you. It's disgusting, but what a fucking treasure just to be able to go and see somebody preserved like that. Famous. I mean, let's just see about anybody, but I want to be preserved like that. I want people to come up to me and be like, oh, that was Zach Roberts. Wow. He wrote fucked up stories and he wanted to be stuffed, and here he is, stuffed. Cool. And then you'd go on down the museum, but you know what? It's cool. It's weird. Look it up.
Drink your prune juice, you old bat.